Oh, yeah, boomer Bolsheviks. Yeah, that'll become relevant in a second or two. Yeah, video up the wonderful Darren Grimes. I'll try and avoid Darren Grimes if I possibly can do, but he's speaking about the events at Durham and Rod Liddle, so I thought we'd unpack what he was saying. I do disagree with him slightly. You may notice this.
You might be surprised to learn that I disagree with the Spectator columnist Rod Liddle on some things. A more recent example would be on mask wearing, and how it isn't much of an imposition on all of us, according to Rod. Well, tell that to the children in classrooms, I would reply, or waiting staff wearing the things with little proven efficacy all day long. In my view, that's completely intolerable, but guess what? I think he's more than welcome to make the case for mask wearing, and more than welcome to criticise people with my view as who find them intolerable as being selfish and all the rest of it, whatever he might criticise us as being. And guess what? Crucially, I hold this one-time popular opinion. My feelings around mask wearing aren't enough to mean Rod Liddle should be removed of a platform that one of our most august education institutions, supposedly anyway, should provide for a speaker as controversial as Rod Liddle.
Okay, right. Yes, we'll come on to other things which potentially Darren would disagree with Rod Liddle. It's a huge issue, isn't it? I mean, it's a burning issue, and you think about over Rod Liddle's career, all the things he's been criticised for. I mean, the really huge one, the fault line, would be mask wearing, wouldn't it? Or maybe not. Yes. If you've not watched an earlier video, I'll leave a link down below about the actual facts about Rod Liddle giving his talk. He turned up at the university basically unannounced on the invitation of his mate, the principal, and that effectively is what this is about. But I'm quite surprised that Darren Grimes doesn't have problems with other stuff that Rod Liddle has said. We'll come on to that in a minute.
Why shouldn't he be able to be provided a platform to speak to a group of students?
Right. Yes, he was provided with a platform to speak to students, or speak at students, I think would be a more apt description. But the big debate here is exactly why was he? Why was he? Because the students had no say in him being there, and they hadn't been informed that he was going to be there. This is the crucial crux of this matter, which I think Darren might just be ignoring. I don't know. He doesn't have a university degree. He didn't get as far as actually finishing anything other than, I think, the first year. So maybe he hasn't got that far yet. We'll see.
Because that's what happened, folks. Rod Liddle at the University of Durham cracked a joke that he was disappointed to not see any sex workers, which was a nod to a recent story surrounding the university on safety training provided by them to undergraduates working in the industry. I kid you not, sex work classes, essentially.
Okay, fine. But, I mean, there's number one, I don't think it was that much of a joke. And, it was expressly designed as a small, sneery little dig. Again, have a look at my previous video. And shouldn't the university, as part of its welfare programme, be providing for its students? Now, I mean, ever since the universities have been charging $9,500 or whatever it is per year for the joys of getting a degree, an awful lot of poorer undergraduates have actually been involved in sex work. So, sort of welfare-ish kind of thing to do, one would have thought. Anyway, leaving that aside.
And students at the event stormed out, apparently. Some claimed to be, quote-unquote, absolutely livid, literally shaken, at Liddle's comments on issues around gender. The local Labour Society naturally came out and said, our university doesn't owe hate a platform. I mean, get a grip. The college's principal, said at South College, we value, which is where it was, we value freedom of speech, and labelled those walking out as pathetic. Now, folks, he's since apologised. I will be doing no such thing. I've just called them pathetic myself. I will be doing no such thing.
Yeah, well, your job isn't on the line. You haven't woken up in the morning having had a bit of a laugh at students' expense, well abled by your arse, and I quote there, of a wife, to realise that perhaps what you thought was something very, very funny has gone slightly pear-shaped.
Because I think it's with regret that he's apologised. The student union has called on him to resign, and the university has began an investigation. More than 1,000 students have signed a letter to Durham's Vice-Chancellor claiming that Liddle made transphobic, sexist, racist and classist remarks. I wonder how many of them actually heard his speech.
Well, I think as a Christmas dinner, a very large gathering, probably quite a lot of them, Darren, but you may notice here that you are commenting on something that you weren't at as well, as indeed am I, just to knock that one on the head.
Now, I've had emails protesting my tweet defending Rod Liddle at Durham Uni. The right to address students who wish to hear him and agree with him or challenge him, also known as free speech, folks, is a really important and fundamental right in my view. Now, to me, this is a new authoritarianism. It's a new, they say...
Right, and here comes the kind of right-wing stuff that you'd expect, whereby the spectre of, I don't know, is it Hitler or it's Marxism this time, isn't it? Yes. Rears its head. Let's hear more.
Of course we like free speech. And then they set out a long list of prerequisites that your speech has to meet for it to be acceptable. He made some jokes about non-binary people, apparently, and apparently there was someone non-binary in the audience, and the student said, "This is hate speech. I'm sorry. Your trendy new genders and all the rest of it that change every 2 minutes. You've got this long list, a new lexicon of genders and all. These students are petulant prats, right? They have a right to walk out. I don't doubt that for a second. I'm not suggesting they have to remain there chained to a speech that they don't want to hear. But they don't have the right to call for the college principal to lose his job, or for Mr. Liddle to lose his right to a platform. They do not.
Okay, the college students are complaining about Mr. Liddle being invited there by the principal against their knowledge. Again, it's not actually a free speech issue. Nobody there, I don't think, is calling on the fact that Rod Liddle should never say anything again. Simply that what he was saying to that particular group of people appeared to be expressly designed to gain a reaction from them.
Not have the right to dictate who can and cannot address their university. If these Marxist millennials can't handle...
Right, yeah. Just, I mean, he shoehorned the phrase Marxist millennial in there, but of course they are Gen Zers. I'm sure if he actually did a bit of a Google search, he could find out with a better phrase. There are revolutionaries that begin with G. There's Gramsci, for example. That might work. Or you could make some pun on the words, but he's decided to go with Bolshevik boomers. Effectively. There, I've just made that one up myself.
A few words and jokes, then I say God help them in the real world, folks. My fear is that there's a growing authoritarianism creeping across not just our country but the West. Feelings are more important than facts. Silence and dissent and
Yes, feelings are more important than facts, except of course what Rod Liddle was saying to these people wasn't in any way, shape or form factual. It was just his usual stuff, and as I say, I will come on to some of the other stuff that he said. He has a lot of previous form.
Voices. Following the science means you'd better shut up. You can't say that, is heard far too often. This nation used to be a bastion of free expression, with its universities serving as the intellectual defenders of these laudable principles. And I tell you what I do take away from this sorry saga is that unless you want your child to, at a cost of over, 9,250 quid a year, unless you want them to leave university, these indoctrination camps, somewhere to the left of Chairman Mao, perhaps it's best to skip it altogether, even if it does purport to be a Russell Group world leader.
Well, it is a Russell Group world leader, and I do like the way that, as ever, from some right-wing commentator who finds it incredulous that people should actually hold left-wing views. They do, Darren. They do. Okay? Maybe they came to that conclusion all by themselves. After all, they are at university, one of those bastions of free thought. You want people to think for themselves, and now effectively what you're doing is you're saying, no, we don't want them to think that. That sounds like creeping authoritarianism to me.
I'm Darren Grimes for Reasons UK.
Okay, yeah. Just to suggest to Darren Grimes some of the other things he might decide that he doesn't agree with Rod Liddle. I'll point you to the Wikipedia post about Rod Liddle. First of all, he doesn't appear to like the concept of gay people very much, Darren. There's one for you. I wonder if you agree with him on that. I mean, certainly it's well reported about his comments about use of poppers, etc. His phrase was "ew" to that, Darren. So that's basically what he thinks of you. Enormously long list of racist stuff from the Mr. Millwall supporter himself. Suggesting that effectively black people are responsible for street crime. He's called Muslims savages. He's actually put some stuff out in support of the BNP. He's once said that there wasn't nearly enough Islamophobia within the Tory party. What do you reckon, Darren? Do you agree with him on that? Do you think there should be a lot more Islamophobia in the Tory party? Or do you think it's the right amount of Islamophobia? I'd be curious to hear that one. And lastly, which is just a totally bizarre one, he made a joke, because he makes brilliant jokes, doesn't he, which nobody could find offence at, about not being able to smoke at Auschwitz. Now, think about that. The Jewish Chronicle had a go at him over that, so what do you reckon, Darren? I realise he's not a member of the Labour Party, so he can't possibly be anti-Semitic, but might we... Do you agree with something like that, which sounds a tad anti-Semitic? Or do you not agree with that? Is that more important than the debate about masks, which was so important earlier? And lastly, there's just, I don't know, there's 100 weight of sexist comments from him, probably most famously around Harriet Harman, along the lines of, well, I'd need a lot of beer before I did, ho, ho, ho. How hilarious, Darren. Hilarious. Anyway, folks, there you have it, Mr. Grimes. Yes, the usual stuff that you can always guess what he's going to say before he says it. Of course he doesn't disagree with Rod Liddle, but once again you'll notice the way that this is being twisted into an issue of free speech when in fact it isn't. I think it's just an issue of really good manners, and people have a right to expect manners. Don't they, Darren? Don't they? Yeah. These balmy Bolsheviks or Gramsci Gen Zers. Yeah. Anyway, have a good rest of the day.